Hi, in this video lecture, I want to talk about body paragraphs for paper number 3. I want to give you a heads up that from the start, this is going to be one of our longest lectures. In fact, I think it is the longest lecture of the semester. So I want to encourage you to stop and start and to pause this recording. Maybe don't try to get through the whole thing at once, but take it in small 3 to 4 minute chunks. So you've read the rubric and you've read the sample essay, but let me just remind you of the basic elements of the paragraph structure that we're going to follow. You're going to have a topic sentence that links specific evidence from your book, something you find on a specific page number that you can cite in your paper, to a GE outcome. Miracosta GE outcome. Then you're going to take a few sentences and explain what the GE outcome means. Now, you practiced this skill already in a blog post. Then you're going to look at specific evidence from the book. Once again, an example, a piece of data, a chart, an image, a story that you can find on a specific page, and you're going to interpret that evidence. And then finally, you're going to wrap the paragraph up with some clincher sentences that explain to the reader how has what you've discussed in this paragraph influenced how you think about the job or the career. Is this exciting to you? Is this a little scary to you? Can you do it? Will you need more training? Now that you've learned this about the job, how does that knowledge influence you or shape your thinking about the job? I think for a lot of people, the evidence idea is the most challenging part of this paper. And I want to remind you that at its core, this is a research paper. The thing is, you're just researching one text. So you're taking the Miracosta GE outcomes as a lens and applying that to one text. And to do that effectively, you are going to have to carefully examine and study your text. You're not going to have to read every page, but you're going to have to go through it carefully, scanning, looking for key evidence, and looking for ways to explain, interpret, and connect that evidence. So as you think of this process of finding evidence in your paper, I want you to think in terms of hours, not minutes. I don't want you to think that you're going to be able to come up with a GE outcome and then scan the book for 15 minutes and find something. You're going to have to spend hours sifting through this book and really carefully looking for the material in it that has a compelling connection to the GE outcomes. So please remember that research is not a science, it's an art, and research is measured in hours, not minutes. Now, there's two ways you can approach building toward a body paragraph in paper number 3. One is you start with the outcome. That's an outcome I think is really interesting. And then you go to your research book and flip through it looking for evidence that connects to that outcome. And look for the best piece of evidence. Say, oh, I like this story here. Or I like this graph here. I like this chart here. I like this case study here. I think it really connects to that GE outcome. Pick the best, the most compelling piece of evidence from maybe among 3 or 4 you find, and then you start pulling things together as you explore the connection and construct a paragraph. The flip side is to go the other way around. You're flipping through your book and you find this really cool story about what people in this job do, or a really interesting chart or some really interesting data. And then you say, okay, now wait, what is the relationship between this cool piece of evidence I found and the GE outcomes? In other words, in the second approach, finding the evidence comes first, then the connection to the GE outcome. In the first approach, you start with a GE outcome and then find evidence. Both ways work, and you may find that you use one or both at different points in your paper for different paragraphs. Here's a pre-writing technique that might help you think about this. It's a good idea to set up a table in Word, and in that table, identify and explain the GE outcome that you're going to explore on the left side. And then on the right side, identify and interpret the specific evidence from the text that you're going to use. Now again, by specific, we mean something you find on a specific page, and you want to include that page number here in your pre-writing chart and on your paper. And by evidence, we mean a story, an example, a quote, statistic, case study, table, chart, diagram, image, problem, exercise, activity, etc. Problems can actually be really good. Like if you're looking at a textbook, the problems that are asked can really tell you something about the thinking skills that you need. Anyway, on the left side of the chart, you jot down your notes about what the GE outcome is and what you think it means, thinking in terms of a definition and an example of it before you move to the text. And then on the other side, you have evidence from the text that you've jotted down notes about, and you have a specific page number where you can find that evidence. And you're going to be quoting or paraphrasing or doing a mix of the two as you present this evidence in your body paragraph. Once you've diagrammed a pre-writing chart, so to speak, now it's time to start drafting a paragraph. And I've created this little graphic organizer to help you think about how you might want to structure your paragraph. So you're going to start with a topic sentence that links the book you've chosen with an outcome and explains that relationship. Now, the sample I have here is different than the kind of topic sentences that Amy wrote in her paper. Amy did a very clever thing where she took a quote that described the piece of evidence from her text or from her book and linked it to a quote from the GE outcomes page. That's a very sophisticated move she makes in her paper, and sometimes I don't think it really explains the relationship as well as it could. A more standard approach is the kind of sentence I'm offering here, where it says, a chart diagramming three types of patient data nurses must consider while assessing a patient demonstrates how nurses must be able to, quote, combine evidence to support a theory or argument. By the way, there should have been a page number on that topic sentence because I'm presenting the evidence for the first time. But what you can see from this topic sentence is it points to a specific piece of evidence, a chart. And it explains that using an active verb that evidence demonstrates that nurses must have this skill. So once again, we've got a topic sentence that links the book and the outcome and explains the relationship. So that's kind of a standard approach. It looks a lot like the topic sentences we've been writing all semester. That's the way I encourage you to do it. But if you want to experiment with a more creative form like what Amy does in her paper, go for it. Now, once you've got your TS, the other two things you're going to have in your paragraph are the explanation of the term from the GE. And again, remember, as we've been practicing since you wrote that blog post a couple weeks ago, definition and example. What does it mean to support a theory, to combine evidence to support a theory or argument? Can you give me an example of that, an example that is prior to, outside of the evidence that you're going to present from the book? So just like you did in the blog post, how does this work? What does it mean? What's an example of it? You're going to take a few sentences to do that. Then you're going to move over and look at some evidence of the term, the GE outcome that you found from the book. And when I say term here, I mean the GE outcome that you found, right? And so that's where you're going to look at description of some specific evidence. In this case, it's the chart, an interpretation of how the evidence suggests an expert in this career must have this thinking skill. So on the evidence side, we're talking about describing and interpreting. On the explanation side, we're talking about defining and providing an example. Finally, the clincher, at the end of your paragraph, you're going to say, how does this connection between the ideas here, between the GE outcome and my book, how does it shape how I think about this career? Does it make it more interesting, intriguing, more exciting, less? Do I have this skill already? Do I think I'd be good at this? Will I need more education to develop this skill? Those are the kind of things you want to explore at the end of your paragraph. And again, if you go to the sample essay, Amy does a very nice job with that. In fact, she does a very nice job with all four of these pieces. Her topic sentences take a kind of alternative approach to the one I'm explaining here, but they still work. And the explanation of her outcome and the discussion and interpretation of the evidence from the book are outstanding. And perhaps the strongest thing she does are these terrific clincher sentences at the end of her paragraphs. Okay, so I've walked you through what a topic sentence should look like. I walked you through what a body paragraph should look like. I've explored some tools that can visually help you with that. A pre-writing table and a table that outlines the structure of the paragraph for you. So what happens next? Well, now it's time for you to do your research. You need to study the outcomes and scan your text. Again, thinking in terms of hours, not minutes. Then you need to construct a topic sentence explaining the relationship between the outcome and the evidence that you found. Then you want to explain your outcome or the terms from your outcome. Then you want to present and interpret evidence from your text. You pull it all together at the end of the paragraph with a clincher that reflects on how this makes you feel about the job. Above all, be patient with yourself. This will take lots of time and require many rethinkings and revisions. Drafting this paper is time consuming. The paper's shorter than the second paper, but I think the complexity of the thinking I'm asking you to do is very rigorous. So give yourself time and be patient with yourself. Thanks for your attention to this video. Remember to come back to it again and again. Stop it, start it, pause it, watch it in smaller chunks, and I'll see you in the course blackboard.